Hi, my name is Julie Ewing, and today I will be talking about sexual harassment in schools. Sexual harassment can be a sensitive topic to discuss, both with students and staff, but I think it is a very important one to talk about. I would like to first start out with this video that I found. Sometimes I have a hard time getting it to play. There we go.
It's not acceptable for someone to grope you. It's not acceptable for someone to verbally abuse you.
Going into certain classrooms, I knew at some point during the day, every class, I was going to be called gay or a fag.
Whatever makes you uncomfortable, I think, is what crosses the line.
Definitely had me feel scared. I would even say terrified.
Sexual harassment. Almost 80% of students in secondary schools report experiencing sexual harassment at school. Now, at the elementary level, it is exhibited differently, and thus it may be overlooked. In fact, sexual harassment has become so commonplace that many accept it as something everyone puts up with. This from research done by the National Association of School Psychologists. What is sexual harassment? I work for USD 438 and wanted to see what their wording, what their definition was for sexual harassment. So I went to their board policy handbook, which is found on the school website. And this is the definition that they have. Sexual harassment is unlawful discrimination on the basis of sex under the Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, Title 12 of the Civil Rights Acts of 1964, and the Kansas Acts of Discrimination. All forms of sexual harassment are prohibited at school, on school property, and at all school-sponsored activities, programs, or events. Sexual harassment against individuals associated with the school is prohibited, whether or not the harassment occurs on the school grounds. So that's sexual harassment. What are some examples of it? Again, I went to 438's handbook, and if you look on the internet, there are you can find list and list of examples of sexual harassment, but I wanted to see what exactly was listed in the school handbook. And I know that it says that it includes but not limited to, so that can be a blanket statement. But I was a little disappointed that we only had 3 examples of sexual harassment for our district. And they are unwelcome sexual advances, request for sexual favors, and verbal or physical conduct of sexual nature. Now, I know it's not limited to, but with the way things are with the internet and cyberbullying, and I think that we may want to look at adding some vocabulary into that instead of just verbal or physical, maybe including cyber conduct of some kind of wording to include that in there. So who is responsible if sexual harassment occurs? Well, there was a court case called Davis versus Monroe County Board of Education, where the Supreme Court ruled that public schools may be sued for failing to deal with students who harass their classmates. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that school administrators must take harassment claims seriously. Confidentiality must be maintained at the greatest degree possible. And liability charges may be made even if the teacher is the only one aware of harassing behavior. So if you are a building administrator, then it will be your job to make sure that you have that line of communication open with your teachers and they feel comfortable coming to you and talking to you about this. Establishing school policy is critical. According to federal law, each school must have a written policy against sexual discrimination, including behaviors associated with sexual harassment. So check to make sure your policy clearly defines sexual harassment, what is inappropriate, and then identify a procedure for investigating complaints. Some ways to identify sexual harassment, some symptoms. Students may feel upset, embarrassed, anxious, vulnerable, unsafe, have a sense of helplessness. Students may have difficulty talking to adults about sexual harassment. Everything must be done to not downplay the situation. When you're investigating reports, all harassment reports must be taken seriously. Legal problems arise when school personnel are aware of an incident but do not effectively respond. And again, school administrators must maintain confidentiality of the student and address the issue. Well, we know sexual harassment occurs, so what can we do? What are some constructive consequences? Now, according to the Brigham Young University article, and I quote from them, it says, although the tendency is to focus on punishment for offenders, implementing a zero-tolerance policy does not address the needs of students that harass. These students need to learn positive social skills and have opportunities to practice them in a supportive learning environment. Prevention is always the key, and to prevent sexual harassment, it must be an ongoing priority. Training that occurs over time, across settings, and includes the entire faculty, staff, and administrative personnel will be more effective than a one-time session of training of teachers. Just showing that short video at the beginning of my presentation could be a great opening to a lesson, but it can't be all there is. You can't just show a video and then move on, or talk about it for 5 minutes, or have a training for half a day and then never talk about it again. It must be ongoing. It must be a priority. In conclusion, sexual harassment is a sensitive topic. We must provide positive, proactive behavioral supports, ongoing training, and discussions as part of the daily school routine rather than relying solely on disciplinary consequences for inappropriate behavior and language. I have included some resources for you to use. If you would like to look at those, there's some different handouts that you can print out, some checklists for your buildings. And then I will conclude my presentation with the references that I used for this slideshow. I thank you very much for you listening.